Welcome today to the first webinar of the 2024 CSC Development in Action webinar series. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Evangeline, and I'm the CSC Alumni Engagement Officer with the CSC Alumni team. It's a pleasure meeting you all joining this webinar today. We are really happy to launch this year's webinar series. It is a monthly webinar series, so we hope to see you all for our live webinars every month. Today's webinar, we are exploring the impact to doctoral research in conversation with the 2023 CSC Research Impact Award winners. Quite an interesting webinar today, and today's webinar will be delivered by two of the three winners of the 2023 RIA Awards. To give you a bit more information of what the Research Impact Awards is, the CSC Research Impact Awards celebrate the research and publication endeavors of Commonwealth scholars and alumni at an early stage or mid-career research stages. The annual awards are offered through two streams and promote the important research undertaken by doctoral Commonwealth scholars and alumni and its value to international development. In this webinar, the speakers will discuss their winning articles and the important role of research and researchers in addressing global challenges and contributing to sustainable development through the implementation and uptake of their findings. So I would now like to introduce our speakers, our two winners delivering this webinar today. Today we have Commonwealth alumnus Maryam Bashir. She's the winner of the 2023 CSC Research Output Stream for her article, focusing on the successful completion of a 9-step synthesis of the potent anti-tuberculosis drug, or I think it's the potent tuberculosis drug. Correct me, Maryam. And she will talk more about her winning piece later in this presentation. Maryam is a 2020 Commonwealth Split-Site Scholar from Pakistan. She's currently completing her doctoral studies in organic chemistry at the University of Bristol and the University of Lahore in Pakistan. And our second winner is Cornelius. Joining her today is Cornelius Dodoo, the winner of the 2023 Taylor and Francis CSC Research Impact Research Implementation and Uptake Stream. His winning article focused on the development of a local antibiogram for a teaching hospital in Ghana. Once again, Cornelius will be presenting on his winning piece today. Cornelius is a senior lecturer at the University of Health and Allied Sciences in Ghana, and he is a 2010 Shared Scholar and a 2013 Commonwealth Scholar from Ghana. He's completed his MSc in Drug Delivery and a PhD in Pharmacy at UCL School of Pharmacy. So, post this webinar, we will have a webinar delivered by the third winner in February, on 20th February, by Pradeep Damala, who is the third winner of the CSC Research Impact Awards. So please do keep an eye out for further information and invitation mailing to join the February webinar as well. But before further ado now, I would now like to just quickly go through the overview of today's session. Today, we will be discussing an introduction. The speakers will provide an introduction and overview of their research papers. They'll also discuss the impact of their research, and we will then open the floor to a Q&A session. So moving on to Maryam's research paper. Maryam, would you like to begin with your research presentation?
Yes, sure. Thank you. Can I have my first slide, please? Okay, thank you, Angeline, for your kind introduction and provide us opportunity to present our work in this webinar. And I hope my voice is audible. Okay. So tuberculosis, TB, is a major health concern because it is the second most deadly infectious disease around the globe after AIDS, and it is caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis bacteria. And the prevalence of TB is worldwide, particularly in lower and middle income countries. According to World Health Organization, 1/4 of Earth's population has been infected with latent TB. Although it's preventable, but still almost 2 million people died every year with this disease. The ratio of tuberculosis has increased significantly due to multi-drug resistance, extensive drug resistance, and totally drug resistance, making it one of prime challenges in treatment of TB. So current treatment of TB takes 6 to 9 months, which is really prolonged treatment using combination of first line and second line anti-TB drugs. It has been more than 5 decades. There is no new drug candidate in the treatment of TB therapy alternatives, and that's why bacteria strain has got resistance against them. And also there are numerous factors such as inconsistent intake of anti-TB drugs, patient dereliction, non-availability of drugs, which contributed to disappointment to accomplish a cure for diseases in many developing countries. Bedaquiline, which is a new anti-TB drug, was first developed by Johnson & Johnson pharmaceutical industry in 2006, and it was approved by Food and Drug Administration, FDA, in 2012, and its market name are Dodoo, and other names are given in the slide. The main feature and the main uniqueness of this drug is this unique mode of action, which kills the ATP synthase of Mycobacterium tuberculosis and inhibits the growth of bacterial strains within a week. And TB is curable within a month as compared to 6 to 9 months of treatment of other drugs. But the problem and the main challenge is synthesis of this drug, and due to its complex structure, because it has 2 stereogenic centers, therefore there are very few synthetic approaches that has been made so far in recent years. You can see here in this slide on the right hand side, this is the very short introduction of what we have done here. We have developed the synthesis of bedaquiline employing sulfurylate asymmetric epoxidation in 9 linear steps with overall 8% yield. And these steps are highly selective, which involve very selective oxidation, which give 96:4 in enzymatic ratio, and region selective removal of this epoxide gave 96:4 in favor of desired isomer. We have used sulfide, chiral sulfide, which is really inexpensive, readily available, can be derived from a compound limonene, which can be extracted from peel of citrus fruits, and also commercially available, and it's readily available. And can we go to next slide, please? We have in our synthesis, we have addressed the problems with previous synthesis, which involves there are large number of steps, and also they used very complex raw materials, and they gave very low yields and making it difficult to launch in on industrial level and availability of drug in developing countries. The key steps involved in our synthesis can be used for other drug candidates, for synthesis of other drug candidates and other complex molecules. We aim to collaborate with other pharmaceutical industries to launch our synthetic strategy for synthesis of bedaquiline to reduce its cost, and also we are planning to collaborate pharmaceutical industries in Pakistan, so that we can reduce the import costs, and also on one hand, and also we can export the drug other countries, which can also increase the GDP of Pakistan. So that's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maryam. That was a very wonderful short presentation on your winning research article. Moving on, we have Cornelius, who will now share an overview of his research paper.
All right, thank you very much, Evangeline, and good day, everyone. Shall we have the first slide, please? So my article focused on developing an antibiogram for Ho Chi Minh Hospital, the highest level of healthcare in the Volta region of Ghana. An antibiogram basically is a representation of the susceptibility of disease-causing organisms to antimicrobials. This is a very useful tool in tackling antimicrobial resistance. Antimicrobial resistance is when you have disease-causing organisms developing resistance to drugs used against them. Data indicates that developing countries are the most affected by antimicrobial resistance. As a developing country, we have our challenges with infrastructure and laboratory capacity. Therefore, having such a tool can serve as a guide to antimicrobial prescribing. Next slide, please. Shall we have, yes, please, yeah, thank you. I will not go into the methods due to time, but you can please find this in my article. Touching on some key findings, this work focused only on antibiotics, that is antimicrobials used against bacteria. To know which antibiotics bacteria are becoming resistant to, it was important to initially have an idea of the prevalence or number of these bacteria that's, we have in the facility. So from the figure on the left, it was observed that Escherichia coli or E. coli was the most commonly isolated bacterium, with about 28% of 891 isolates being E. coli. E. coli is a bacterium that can cause infections in your intestines, as well as the urinary tract. It can also contaminate wounds. In this work, most of the infections were urinary tract infections, and E. coli was the most commonly isolated bacterium from urine samples. We also found that E. coli was becoming resistant to some antibiotics, as indicated in the table that is to the right. These are antibiotics that the World Health Organization consider watch or reserve group antibiotics, that is antibiotics to be used with care or as last resorts. So assuming a patient has a urinary tract infection with E. coli as the cause, prescribing some of these antibiotics in the table, which are typically expected to work, may not work because E. coli has become resistant to the antibiotics and the patient's infection may prolong. But once the prescriber has this information beforehand in an antibiogram, he or she is guided in making the right choice, as an antibiogram will give you an idea of the drugs most likely to work. Next slide, please. So this work was done in 2022 using data from 2021. At the moment, the laboratory department is updating the antibiogram with data from last year because resistance patterns change, and it's always important to have updated antibiograms. Our findings were shared with the National Antimicrobial Resistance Secretariats of the Ministry of Health in Ghana, and we are currently developing similar antibiograms for other key referral facilities within the Volta region to ultimately promote good health and well-being within the region. Thank you very much.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Cornelius, for a brief overview of your research article. So moving on, we will now have an engaging discussion. I will ask Maryam and Cornelius a few questions to just learn more about their research and their experiences as researchers in conducting their particular research studies. Maryam, the first question is for you. Following the publication of your research, given that you are still, you're about to actually submit your doctoral thesis, following the publication of your research, in what ways will this lead to change in your country and or within relevant organizations?
Thank you for an interesting question. As we have discussed earlier, the tuberculosis major global health concern, and pharmaceutical industries as well as organic and medicinal chemists are emphasizing to introduce the new drug candidate which could shorten the TB treatment and also with less side effect or less toxicity. With our synthetic route, the number of steps has been reduced, selectivities has been improved, cost has reduced, and also overall yield of yield has been improved. Pharmaceutical industries can use our synthetic route for synthesis of bedaquiline on industrial level. And also other organic chemists can also use the key steps and major findings of our synthesis, synthetic steps of bedaquiline in new drug candidates and even in analog of bedaquiline. So that is how we are changing the research in
That's
our
that's quite
documentation.
that's quite interesting. Thank you so much for sharing further insights into it, and to see that your research is already starting to have those contributions within the pharmaceutical industry in Pakistan. The next question for you is, in what ways are you ensuring that your research is further disseminated?
Okay, so synthesis of bedaquiline, as I told earlier, it's a very hot topic among the medicinal chemistry and in organic chemistry because of its prime challenges, because it has really complex, simple yet complex structure because of two stereotype centers. So we are planning to collaborate with pharmaceutical industries in future so that they can opt our synthetic strategy to launch on an industrial level, because the raw materials are really cheap, inexpensive, and are readily available. And also, we are planning to employ key steps for synthesis of the drug analog, which is TPAJ786, which is even more potent than the original drug. And this is under clinical trials. So, but unfortunately, in Pakistan, we do not have much facilities and not well-equipped labs to do further research. And also, I am looking for more funding for postdoctorate in future so that I can carry out my research work in future related to tuberculosis.
Great. Thank you so much, Maryam, for your responses to these questions. Moving on, we have our next question for Cornelius. And the question is, how did you go about implementing your research to contribute to real change?
All right, thank you very much. So this is part of a bigger work we are doing to enhance the capacities of healthcare workers in the Volta region of Ghana in practicing antimicrobial stewardship. So we started by educating staff on the concept of antimicrobial stewardship, then generated data from the facility to identify gaps. Staff can relate a lot more to local data, and data is also important as it provides evidence of the problem. Then we disseminated whatever data we generated and engaged major stakeholders to get their buy-in. Generating data without disseminating may yield little or no impact. And we also work closely with hospital staff in developing the antibiogram. This ensured ownership by the hospital staff and, a continuous cycle of education and capacity building is something we do all the time, targeting key staff who will intend to train other colleagues, adopting a training of trainers model will ensure that other staff eventually get the knowledge as well. That is the approach we use in implementing our research.
Thank you so much, Cornelius. Your next question is, in what ways have you seen further uptake and how have you been part of this process?
All right. In Ghana, we have a very active antimicrobial resistance secretariat at the Ministry of Health that is constantly engaging stakeholders on the subject. There is a similar drive by the ministry to know the resistance patterns across the country. So these findings have been shared with the secretariat to highlight the resistance trends in the Volta region. I've been part of meetings and stakeholder engagements organized by the secretariat to provide updates on activities relating to antimicrobial resistance. Also, after conducting this work together with my team, we secured more funding to help other referral hospitals within the region to ascertain their antimicrobial resistance patterns. The initial focus was to ensure best practices regarding antimicrobial use in the highest level of care. But once we had initiated the stewardship program there, it was important to engage other lower levels of healthcare to ensure cases are better managed and reduce the number of complicated cases that eventually end up being sent to the highest level of care, as well as promote good health and well-being in the region.
It's quite interesting to know from your responses that, how similar yours and Maryam's field is in terms of conducting research and improving healthcare services within your respective countries. So yeah, thank you so much, Cornelius, for your response. We now move on to the next segment, and this segment is basically a question for both of you. We would now like to know more about, the impact that your Commonwealth scholarship has had towards your research study. So Maryam, would you like to tell me in what ways did your Commonwealth scholarship contribute towards the research that you have undertaken?
Sure. So, Commonwealth Scholarship was a life-changing experience for me. I am a Spitside 2020 scholar, and I was in University of Bristol Chemistry Department. Being a part of like being in Pakistan and in developing country, we do not have much facilities and not well equipped labs, and we do not have hand-on practice on so many instruments. Being there in University of Bristol, I have learned many skills. I have started my research from scratch, from zero, and also later on when I completed my Commonwealth period, which was for 1 year, I also got funding for 1 more year from my professor over there, so that I can complete my research over there, and also attending different international conferences, because we have got funding from Commonwealth and presenting our work to international conferences. We were able to collaborate globally with different people from our community, and also social networking by attending different events of Connect and Collaborate by Commonwealth in London. And it helps really helps in personal level growth. So yeah, that's how Commonwealth has changed or impact in our during my doctoral degree.
That's really good to know. So, a good thing that you mentioned about, the networking opportunities that Commonwealth scholars have while they are here pursuing their studies. We do have the Connect and Collaborate event upcoming in February, which is a great opportunities for, scholars studying at the moment in the UK to meet with each other and network and share more about their studies and their research and their work. Yeah, thank you so much, Maryam, for your response. Cornelius, would you like to share your thoughts on this?
Sure. So for me, the CSC has been instrumental in what I do currently. I was lucky to have the CSC sponsor both my MSc and PhD. I gained some skill sets from my MSc, which helped a lot during my PhD. And with my PhD, an aspect involved developing an automated yet inexpensive method for antimicrobial sensitivity testing. However, upon returning to Ghana, I observed there was a real challenge with awareness of antimicrobial resistance, and that's seen more of a low-hanging fruit. So I sort of switched from the diagnostics, which I was doing for my PhD, to more of capacity building and public engagement to raise awareness about antimicrobial resistance. And that is how the CSC influenced or has influenced what I'm doing currently. Yeah.
Thank you so much for highlighting, the skills that you embarked on whilst you were on your studies. Okay, so the next segment is basically an opportunity for Cornelius and Maryam to ask each other questions on your respective research study. Maryam, would you like to ask Cornelius any questions that you may have on his research study?
Yeah, thank you so much. And Cornelius, thank you so much for a very insightful presentation. So my question to you is that if you have any further plans to extend your antibiogram other developing countries or in other hospitals other than Ghana?
All right, that's quite interesting. I mean, to extend to other hospitals, certainly. I'm already helping other hospitals in the Volta region of Ghana to develop one. But to other hospitals outside Ghana, that's a bit tricky for me to initiate, but I'm happy to help any hospital that reaches out for support in developing an antibiogram or even to establish an antimicrobial stewardship program. So I'm always available to help.
Great. And my other question is that what is one important or key advice you will give to young PhD scholars for implementation of their research on a global level, or what you will have to say for PhD scholars?
To start with, I would say be passionate about your research. Passion would give you extra motivation. For me, antimicrobial resistance is something I've been passionate about for a long time. Even before I started my recent line of research in the area, I was writing on technical pieces to raise awareness. Also, during your PhD, collaborate or help other researchers whenever you can. I know the timelines for a PhD are very tight. However, when you can help others, certainly please go for it. Some aspects of my PhD involved microbiology, and there were instances where other students needed help with some experiments I built myself. And some of these experiments give you research ideas. Some of these collaborations can also have great impact, but please certainly don't overburden yourself or neglect your work. You would also need some green lights from your supervisor. To make an impact at the global level, you may need to start small, so identify a challenge locally and explore ways to address this and probably scale up to other communities. You can equally make an impact globally through your publications. Findings from your PhD or the methods you use could help others in their research as well. Thank you.
It's really great piece of information. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Maryam. That was like really great questions, especially I'm sure, for the Commonwealth scholars who are in attendance today, as well as QECS scholars. And I'm sure they're inspired to learn more about, how to pursue doctoral studies, or for master scholars. I'm sure they're motivated to further advance in their studies and pursue doctoral studies in the future. Cornelius, would you now like to ask Maryam any questions you may have?
Sure. Thank you very much, Maryam, for your questions and presentation as well. I'm just wondering, can the sulfonylurea-based approach be used in synthesizing medicines for other drug-resistant infections?
Yes. Sulfurylate asymmetric epoxidation is very well-known strategy in organic chemistry, and it has been used so far in synthesis of many drugs for many syntheses like antimalarial, which is quinine and quinidine, and other cancerous and anti-tumor activities. But the studies on multi-drug resistance or extensive drug resistance, as you know, because you are from this field, that has been in discussion or in research for past years. So many people are planning to put this strategy to synthesize this different drugs using sulfurylate asymmetric oxidation.
All right, that's interesting. You also indicated that this is a relatively inexpensive process. Does this inexpensive nature include getting or sourcing the raw materials and reagents key to this process?
Yes. So the raw material, which is a chiral sulfide, which can be extracted from which is isocyanol that can be derived from limonene, which is basically extracted from citrus fruits like lemons and oranges, which are worldwide available, and also it's very cheap, it's commercially available, and we have used very simple materials that are cost effective, and they have less hazardous as compared to other previous chemicals. So in this way, our synthetic strategy is far more cost effective than other synthetic strategies to be launched or industrial level.
All right, thank you very much.
Great. So with this, we now have our next Q&A session. This is basically for our audience to send in your questions via the chat box, and we'll try our best to cover as many questions as possible. Thank you to all those who already started sending in your questions. And also thank you to everyone who have sent in their questions via the registration form in advance. What I'll do is I will try to pull out some questions from the registration forms as well as from the chat box, and Maryam and Cornelius will try to address them in the remaining time that we have now. All right, so Cornelius, can I start with you? Can I ask you a question? Can we begin the Q&A session now? Great. Could you tell me what is the best way to present thesis research to non-technical people? This is a great question, given that both your research topics are related to science, health. What is the best way to communicate the findings of your research to a non-technical audience?
All right. I mean, the key word there is non-technical, so you try not to be as technical as possible. Avoid the use of terms or abbreviations that only people in your field can understand. I mean, you have spent 6 months to a year for a master's, or 3 to 4 years, on a PhD working on a project. So you are always excited whenever you need to talk about it. However, a non-technical person may easily get lost in your research. So I would suggest a brief background as to why you conducted the work, your aim, maybe the major findings, then probably the next steps. But it's also important that the layperson understands how they can relate to your work. How is whatever you have done going to impact their life? I'll say that's how I'll suggest you go about communicating to non-technical audience.
Yep. Thank you so much, Cornelius. Maryam, the next question is for you. How is potency maintained while ensuring low toxicity in the manufacture of the drug bedaquiline?
All right. So potency is maintained while ensuring low toxicity of this drug while synthesis of bedaquiline by the selection of conditions, purification methods, and structural modifications. But I would like to mention one thing here, that we have done the synthetic part, and the clinical trials and other thing has already been done by biochemists and other related persons. And there are many articles and literature available for the toxicity, the mode of action, and the drug resistance, and how it works with the bacterial strains. And we particularly focused on synthetic part. And also, if anyone wants further information, you can get in touch, and I will be happy to help and discuss.
Great. Thank you so much, Maryam. The next question, maybe I can ask Cornelius. How did you cope with the limitations of research funding in the Global South for locally initiated research?
All right. I think this is a major challenge, but there are some ways out. In Ghana, for instance, lecturers or researchers in state universities receive book and research allowance. This is not so much to purchase books and conduct massive research. However, you can always start small. You can perform some preliminary studies, which can be used as proof of concepts, or you can generate data to highlight gaps. From these initial assessments, you can apply for more funding to conduct your work. There are several funding opportunities from the developed countries that support researchers from low and middle income countries. Talk of UK aid, USAID, Danida, you have the Gates Foundation. You just need to explore. You may certainly not be successful with all applications you put in, but you need to develop what I'll call a tough skin. The rejections will certainly come, but you've got to keep trying. There are also some universities that have research grants for their staff. In the University of Health and Allied Sciences, for instance, where I work, there are some openings to support staff to conduct research. So you apply for these as well. You get some seed money, and then you conduct something small and then look at, scaling it up, basically. Thank you.
Some really great tips shared, Cornelius. Thank you. Maryam, if I can ask you the next question. Since there's a close relationship between HIV and tuberculosis, do you have any plans of conducting a similar study on HIV/AIDS?
So Yes, there is very close relation, not very close relation in HIV and tuberculosis because they caused by different pathogens and they have different treatment and different medicines for treatment of particular diseases. Also, I would like to mention one more thing. Latent TB, it is very common in the patients which have HIV because these both diseases go fuel to each other. Currently, I'm just working on tuberculosis, and my further plan is to work on its analog, which is TPAJ 786, as I mentioned earlier, because it's even more potent and it has even less toxicity than the original drug. So yes, I'm currently working on that analog. But maybe in later future, like in my postdoc studies, I would like to work on HIV treatment and with the or multi-drug resistant drug. Yeah.
That's a great point. And for our scholars and alumni, if you are working in a similar field, if your research study is focused on HIV, and if you'd like to know more about Maryam's work and how this can, how her research findings can contribute to your work, please do get in touch with Maryam, and I'm sure she'll be happy to provide guidance. All right, just looking at the chat box, there are quite a few questions that are coming in now. So, Cornelius, the first question is for you. Do you think your research study can be scaled to cover other regions in Ghana?
Yes, it can. Routine tests are conducted every now and then in hospitals. So it's just a matter of building the capacity to extract these data and then analyze, develop an antibiogram. And we are always engaging one another on several platforms. And I know there are other regions in Ghana that are also conducting this. I know this has been done in the Ashanti region for a hospital there. And, it's just a matter of having everyone come on board, and then we can obtain, the national picture when it comes to antimicrobial. So certainly it is something that can be done.
Okay. And you did, just a follow-up question, you did mention about, liaising with various stakeholders in the health sector. And you did briefly touch upon, the Ministry of Health as well. What is the Ministry of Health doing with regards to educating the public on drug resistance?
Yes, so the Ministry of Health engages in several avenues to, educate the public. I mean, there's radio sessions that you have staff from the Ministry of Health going on. Recently, during World Antimicrobial Resistance Awareness Week, there were several, public engagement sessions to, preach about the message and then get everyone on board. So the Ministry of Health is doing a lot. The Ministry of Health is seeking for funds to, conduct research to, shed more light on the situation on the ground. So yes, from my end and my interaction with the Ministry of Health, I know a lot is being done to provide more information when it comes to antimicrobial resistance and then engage the public and create awareness on the subject. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Cornelius. Maryam, the next question is for you. You mentioned about, liaising with the pharmaceutical industries. Would you, or is the process also going to consider clinical trials before industrializing the drug?
Okay, so as I have mentioned earlier, because it's a FDA Food and Drug Administrative approved drug, which was approved in 2012, and before that, all clinical trials have been done.
Okay.
And the problem is, so we are not doing that, and because the work is already done, we are focusing on synthetic part, because the current synthetic part, which is used by industry, it is not cost effective, and maybe the next question is related to this as well. So I'm addressing to that question as well. So the current current synthesis of bedaquiline at on industrial level is not very cost effective. I'm not sure the background of the people, if they are chemists, they will know that it gives on the final stage, it gives 4 stereoisomers. So just one stereoisomer is active against that particular disease, and the three are, you know, just in waste. And on industrial level, we do not want to waste so much material, and we want cost-effective treatment, and we want recycling. So that is why our raw materials and our synthetic route is cost-effective and have improved selectivity and improved overall yield. So this is how we compare the cost as compared to the standard synthetic treatment or synthetic, yeah.
And I remember from our previous discussions, you were talking about how this makes it, how this helps in reducing, how the process helps in reducing cost. And you mentioned something about citrus. Do you want to share that with our audience?
Okay, yeah. So the limonene, it's a organic compound which is extracted from lemon, peel of lemon and oranges from citrus fruits, and then this one overnight reaction with elemental sulfur on room temperature, and we can get very useful chiral sulfide which we use further in our synthesis. So that is how it's cost effective as compared to other synthesis which use really expensive raw materials and chiral catalysts to be launched on, you know, on industrial level. That they are really good synthesis, but on just lab, not on industrial or pharmaceutical level. So because TB is really global major health concern, and in developing countries, the availability of drug is not everyone can afford that, and that is how we are planning to collaborate with the pharmaceutical industry, so that the availability of the current drug can be helpful for the patients in developing countries.
Amazing. So I think that does touch upon you know, the possibility of replicating your work across other regions and across other countries as well, which now brings me to the next question for Cornelius, which is very related to this. Would you advise that such a research conducted in can be conducted in other countries, bearing in mind that the problem is common for developing countries?
Yes, certainly. I mean, once you have an antibiogram, it helps address a number of challenges that we have in developing countries, because aside the infrastructural challenges we have, we also have issues when it comes to poverty. So there are certain places where, you know, certain people may not be able to afford to have these tests conducted. So having an antibiogram will sort of help or guide in antimicrobial prescribing. So certainly it can be done, but then you need to have individuals who are willing and understand and appreciate the challenge on the ground to be able to extract, you know, the data and then develop the antibiogram. Because we have these routine tests being conducted every now and then, but until you take the time to get this sorted, prescribers will not really have an idea of the picture on the ground, because these are conducted every now and then, like I indicated, but you need a summary of, you know, the situation that you can easily refer to guide your prescription or prescribing. So yes, it can be conducted, and I believe it will be very integral and useful. And
yep, thank you so much. The next question is for you as well. What is the minimal information or data that a hospital has to have available before you can set up an antibiogram?
I think it's ideally if you have an annual, you know, data from January to December, it would help. But then if you don't have that, you can always start small and then look at building on. So I'd say enough data. The WHO has got certain set criteria. I mean, for certain organisms, you need about 30 isolates or more before you can make inferences. So there are certain set data that can help you. Once you have these minimum pieces of information, you can certainly conduct one. But then I would say it will help if you have an annual data, because in that way you have a picture of the differences when it comes to seasonal changes. And then you can easily, you know, have a picture that would be representative enough. Otherwise, in certain periods where certain diseases are more common, it could easily lead to your data being skewed. So I propose having an annual worth of data to have a more complete or holistic data.
And would you say, in your experience, if it was challenging or easy for you to liaise with, the health sector to promote this or to communicate this information on gathering data?
Yeah. For me, I have been working with them for a while now. The hospital we started this with is the teaching hospital affiliated with our university. So we already have some collaboration that has been established. So it wasn't so challenging to start with. And at the moment, we are doing this for other hospitals. And it's a matter of engaging, helping leadership of the facility understand the need for this. And once they understand the need, they will certainly give you the go-ahead to conduct this. And then you also owe the facility the responsibility to communicate or disseminate your findings to them, because at the end of the day, research should be impactful. It shouldn't just be about conducting research to leave on the shelf. It should be about communicating your findings to major or key stakeholders so that it could influence change.
Thank you so much for expanding on your response, Cornelius. Maryam, the next question is for you. Is the synthetic approach not added to does the synthetic approach not add to the cost as compared to medicinal plant approach?
So, yeah, that's an interesting question. Natural product has been used for many other diseases, for treatment of other many diseases. But bedaquiline, this is really this is a synthetic drug, and it has really unique mode of action which targets only mycobacterium of Mycobacterium tuberculosis mitochondrial strains. And I think the plant-based treatment, like which are very old, or maybe it need furthermore, like I'm not sure about which plants or which particular materials have been asked. So yeah, maybe you can email me and we can further discuss about particular question.
Great. We have someone who's mentioned in the chat box that they know the company that held the patent on bedaquiline recently, and that they've agreed not to evergreen or extend their patent. Has this made your research more implementable? Did you feel any impact before or after this announcement was made?
So we have published our article. We have not patented it with any particular industry or particular pharmaceutical industry. So anyone can use our synthetic approach. So I think by this announcement, it's not, not very relatable to because we have not patented our work. It's free of cost, and everyone can use our synthetic strategy. So yeah.
Great. Cornelius, next question is for you. So AMR is an area of concern not only for the health sector, but also for the food industry in particular, especially in developing countries. So is it possible to create awareness across the sectors, across different sectors, considering the funding and literacy status of the population in these countries may not be very high?
Yes, certainly. In Ghana, for instance, I know there are other agencies that also do lots of public engagement based on wherever they are working. You have the Environmental Protection Agency, the Food and Drugs Authority, and they provide targeted information to their audiences. So certainly these are going on. In terms of funding, a number of calls that come up usually have their target audience. So if the individual that posed the question is in the food industry, I would say do look out for funding in that area. You can certainly get something to, engage the public, to support you to engage the public. or even conduct further research in that area. And there are lots more general purpose, if I could say so, funds that are also available that you could explore. So certainly there are funds available. As I indicated, it's just a matter of applying and trying. If you're not successful, certainly keep trying. You may be lucky at some point. Thank you.
Great. I think given that we may run out of time, I'd like to now ask probably one last question, which is I think to both of you. So the question is, what are your thoughts on integrating pharmacogenomics in the drugs that you are currently studying, or Cornelius that you've studied? Do you think genetic prescribing is going to be the new norm? Does it even seem financially practical for low and middle income countries like across the Commonwealth to implement this? I'm not sure who would like to respond to this question first.
I think Cornelius will respond to this question because, yeah.
All right, that's okay. First to start with, I didn't really study any particular drug. I worked with, a battery of antibiotics, but because I'm a pharmacist as well, I think pharmacogenomics and personalized or targeted medicine prescribing is an area that is coming up. As to whether currently in developing countries that is practical, it's a different thing altogether, because I believe it's a matter of ranking our priorities, and I think we have a lot low-hanging fruits that can easily be addressed than something that is a lot more complicated, like pharmacogenomics or integrating pharmacogenomics in prescribing. I believe we have a number of challenges that we can easily address before probably stepping up, because you even need to know the genetic makeup of the individual. I'm just wondering how many facilities we have that can easily detect that. And without that knowledge, it becomes difficult to go ahead to integrate it. So at the moment, I'm not so optimistic that we can do that now, because there are other challenges, but certainly in future it should be possible. I hope you address the question well.
Yep. Maryam, would you like to share your thoughts on this?
I think it's not really my cup of tea, so but I think Cornelius really covered well. Yeah.
Great. All right.
It was very different from my plate, so.
Okay, no worries. I think with this, we will now end the Q&A session, but Cornelius and Maryam, thank you so much for addressing the questions that were raised during the live session and through the registration form. If you have any questions, or if you'd like to get in touch with Maryam and Cornelius, you can see their email address on the screen. Please do make a note of their contact details. Maryam and Cornelius would be happy to discuss their winning research article with you all. And you can also please get in touch with them on LinkedIn, on email, on their email addresses, to discuss more, to discuss any queries that you might have, and to read more about their winning research article. You will find that information in the email communication that we sent in advance, and also which is available on the CSC website. With this, Maryam and Cornelius, would you like to quickly summarize before your research, or quickly summarize any thoughts before we end this webinar?
Okay, I think I'll go first now. Thank you so much for this insightful and really interesting webinar. It was really great talking to my other co-winner, Cornelius, and get to know about his research and implementation in his country. So I would like to thank you, Commonwealth, for providing this opportunity and funding during our research in PSD. And yes, and if anyone has further questions, I will happy to discuss through my email. That's all from my side. Thank you very much.
Cornelius?
Thank you very much. So thank you, Evangeline and the team, for organizing this. My final words would be that antimicrobial resistance is everyone's problem. It's a global problem. We all have a role to play in, curbing down the menace. It's not just the healthcare workers. To the general public, I'll just say that don't ask for antibiotics. You would be given one when you need these. Thank you very much.